Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be taking a look at another disturbing case with you. Josh Powell often claimed he was a devoted father, always putting his children first. "I love my sons more than anything. I put them and my family first," he said in an interview. But within months, those words turned out to be completely in vain. Despite all his claims, Josh was not the loving husband he pretended to be. Struggling with uncontrollable spending, he had accumulated over $200,000 in debt and had grown increasingly possessive of his wife, even threatening to flee the country if she ever tried to leave him. This isn't a story of love. It's one of obsession, betrayal, and heartbreak. This is the story of Josh Powell. Our love and respect goes out to Susan, Charlie, Braden, all those who knew and loved the victims, and all those affected by this case. The story of Susan Cox and Josh Powell began like many others. Both were devout members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and met in November 2000 at a dinner party at Josh's apartment. The two were already classmates in a religion course. Their relationship progressed quickly, and they married 6 months later at the Portland, Oregon temple. At the time, Josh was job hopping while Susan left her job as a cosmetologist to work as a broker at Wells Fargo. To support Josh's dreams of becoming a real estate agent, Susan also got her realtor's license to help him in his career, as she truly believed in their future together. In 2005, the Powells welcomed their first son, Charlie, followed by their second son, Braden, 2 years later. Susan hoped their children would strengthen the family bond, but their marriage had already begun to crumble. Josh struggled to hold a steady job, which led to a bankruptcy filing in 2008, and this only made things worse. It eventually reached the point where the two started to hate each other, and this prompted Susan to document their struggles in journals and videotape their belongings as she feared a contentious divorce.
It is 12:33 Mountain Time. Covering all my bases, making sure that if something happens to me or my family or all of us, that our assets are documented. Hope everything works out and we're all happy and live happily ever after as much as that's possible.
She even feared for her safety, as she wrote if she died, it might not be an accident. Josh's upbringing was very dysfunctional. His parents, Stephen and Terica Powell, had a tumultuous marriage that ended in divorce in 1992. According to Terica, Stephen was very harsh towards Josh, and he would verbally and physically abuse him. Josh even attempted suicide as a teenager. His parents' divorce involved accusations of mental unfitness, pornography, polygamy, and witchcraft, with both parents making severe allegations against each other. Stephen, who had a deep-seated hate for the LDS Church and adopted extremist views, influenced his sons with his radical beliefs and contempt for women. Terica's family described him as anti-church, anti-country, anti-authority, anti-morality, and accused him of teaching his sons to mock and insult their mother. This toxic environment left a lasting mark on Josh, who displayed alarming behavior such as threatening his mother with a butcher knife and killing his sister's pet gerbil. The Powell children were deeply traumatized by their upbringing, as they constantly had to move between parents and grandparents all the time. And eventually, Josh started to get violent. His father's influence, characterized by erratic and explosive behavior, left Josh with deep psychological scars. Jennifer Powell Graves, Josh's sister, recounted a chilling conversation with their father about men who stalk and kill their former lovers. And one day, the unthinkable happened. As Christmas 2009 approached, the Powell marriage was at its lowest point. But Josh's wife, Susan, still believed her husband might have been changing for the better. On December 6th, Susan attended church with Charlie and Braden at the Hunter 36th Ward, then walked home with a friend. That afternoon, neighbor Giovanna Owings visited Susan to help untangle yarn for a blanket Susan was crocheting for Charlie. Josh offered Owings dinner but did not invite her children, claiming there wasn't enough food for everyone. As the women worked on the yarn, the boys helped Josh in the kitchen. A half-decorated Christmas tree stood in the living room, with presents for the kids underneath. Susan had been waiting for Josh to bring the rest of the decorations from the garage. Although Josh was drifting from the church, Susan was increasingly involved and had saved money for tithing against Josh's wishes. She mentioned to Owings that they had been doing marriage counseling through the church, but Josh had stopped participating and wasn't reading their assigned marriage book. Owings was nervous discussing the marriage while Josh was there, as Josh tended to dominate conversations. During the visit, Susan felt cold, and Josh brought her a blanket, impressing Owings with the gesture. When dinner was ready, Josh served Owings and Susan on the love seat and ate with the boys at the kitchen table. Owings noticed a change in Josh's behavior, finding him a bit more easygoing. Around 5 p.m., Susan decided to nap, likely due to exhaustion from a recent miscarriage and an ear infection. Owings left around 5:30 p.m. as Josh prepared the boys for sledding. Another neighbor saw Josh return with the boys around 8:30 p.m. At 12:30 a.m., Josh claimed he took the boys camping at Simpson Springs Campground, leaving Susan asleep at home. The weather was snowy and frigid, with sub-zero temperatures that night. By the next morning, the Powell's daycare provider grew concerned when Charlie and Braden were not dropped off on schedule. She couldn't reach Josh or Susan and called Josh's mother and sister, who then called the police. Officers broke into the Powell home, but found no one inside. Instead, they discovered 2 large fans blowing on a wet spot on the carpet. Josh finally answered his cell phone that evening and was told that the police were waiting for him. He was taken to the West Valley Police Station for questioning, where he nervously told a suspicious story about the camping trip.
And your children are telling our detectives that Mom went with you guys last night and that she didn't come back.
She did not go with us.
Okay.
Little Charlie also mentioned the trip, but police found no evidence at the recreation area due to fresh snow. Susan's personal items, including her purse and cell phone, were found in the house, indicating she did not leave at her own will. On December 10th, Josh and the boys, along with neighbors and friends, gathered at Westview Park for a candlelight vigil. They distributed flyers and prayed for Susan's safe return, with Josh shedding a few tears for the cameras, though many found his display fake. But there was another person who was as suspicious as Josh, Stephen Powell. Stephen Powell's disturbing obsession with his daughter-in-law, Susan, showed his view of women as objects of his desire. Even as he served a prison sentence for voyeurism,
In 2009, Stephen was released from prison last July after serving time for child pornography. He had also been convicted of voyeurism.
Stephen's writings revealed his continued fixation on Susan. He described his overwhelming lust for her, detailing how he secretly filmed her and indulged in disturbing acts with her personal belongings.
That's Susan. There's Josh. Standing with her, but I really want her. I wish she would look my way. She was so pretty today when she came over to the house. Wish the lighting was better.
His writings displayed a lack of empathy or remorse, and he portrayed his actions as expressions of love rather than violations of Susan's privacy and dignity. Stephen's public statements, including an infamous ABC News interview where he claimed to have had sex with Susan, further underscored his lack of remorse or understanding of the gravity of his actions.
You know, she had a cold, and I offered to rub her feet, to rub her toes, to give her some stimulation. Started massaging her legs. I would have loved to go all the way up her legs, but I did do her calves because her feet were resting in my crotch, so I sort of rubbed her calves.
The investigation into Susan's disappearance uncovered a chilling collection of Susan's personal items in Stephen's possession as little trophies. What makes it worse is that when Susan confided in Josh about it, Josh would defend his father, as he seemed okay with his father's behavior. Despite Josh and Susan's relocation to Utah in an attempt to distance themselves from Stephen, his obsession persisted until the end. His final journal entries expressed his devastation at the thought of Susan's death, and he professed his so-called love for her. As the search for Susan intensified, her family reached out to the public through press conferences, hoping for any information that could help find her. Additionally, an anonymous donor offered a $10,000 reward. Josh's actions drew suspicion as police found out he had driven his rental car hundreds of miles and searched his family's minivan and home multiple times. In late December, Josh stopped cooperating with the police and decided to hire a lawyer instead. Why did he change his behavior all of a sudden? Police searched through Josh's media interviews, hoping to uncover any clues in his demeanor and tone. Many noticed his indifferent and suspicious attitude during these interviews, which raised doubts about his innocence even further. In January 2010, just a month after Susan disappeared, Josh packed up his belongings and prepared to move back to Washington State with his sons. He had the help of friends and neighbors to load a moving van and trailer, prompting skepticism about his intentions. Josh's credibility took another hit on February 26, 2010, when he and his father launched SusanPowell.org. This action sparked a feud between the Powell and Cox families, with the website being used more for the Powells to defend themselves than to find Susan. In December of the previous year, Josh accused Susan of having a double life and plotting to divorce him. He even linked her to another missing person case, that of Stephen Kuchar. Just when interest in Susan's case seemed to wane, a judge issued a warrant to search Josh's home in Puyallup, Washington, where he lived with his sons and father. This warrant followed Stephen Powell's disturbing interview with ABC News, where he made shocking claims about his relationship with Susan. But Josh Powell's biggest concern wasn't the police or the investigators. It was his own sons, Charlie and Braden. He hoped they were too young to understand or remember what happened to their mom, Susan. In Josh's version of events, he claimed Susan stayed home while he took the boys camping. But Charlie, the oldest, didn't support his dad's story. He told investigators they went camping with both their parents, but when it was time to leave, Mommy didn't come back from where the crystals grew.
Stayed at the park.
Yeah.
Where did she stay at the park?
She,
Do you know where?
she stayed at the National Park.
Do you know where at the park? No?
No. My mom stayed where a crystals are.
As a result, Charlie and Braden were taken from Josh's care and placed with Susan's parents. They became more vocal about what happened during that strange camping trip with Charlie, even drawing a picture showing Mommy in the trunk of the family minivan. Living with Susan's parents gave the boys a sense of safety, and they began to share more about what they remembered. Anne Bremner, the Cox family's attorney, noted that while the boys were still young, each time they spoke, a clearer picture of that night emerged. Josh realized his sons posed a serious threat to him. Despite being seen as a weird but decent father by many, he was unwilling to let his own children implicate him in their mother's disappearance. But the kids weren't the only ones who talked. An employee at a local Flying J gas station claimed she saw the Powell family on the night Susan disappeared. In the middle of a fierce winter storm, a minivan rolled into the gas station parking lot. Out stepped Josh, Susan, Charlie, and Braden. The clerk, known only as Denise, found it strange to see them there at that hour in such bad weather. A man, later recognized as Josh, came in holding a toddler while chasing after another young boy, calling him Charlie. He was wearing a leather jacket and had a dark goatee. The woman, whom Denise later identified as Susan, looked well-dressed for someone about to go camping. Denise noticed she had red eyes like she'd been crying. The couple bought rescue tape, crackers, and licorice at the register. The man told a little boy, waiting by the door, "Hang on a minute. Let me buy this and then we'll go camping." Denise found the whole situation odd. Who goes camping in the middle of the night, especially in a snowstorm, and in a minivan? Shouldn't they have been in an RV or an SUV? They paid in cash, topped off the gas tank, and then vanished. Weeks later, Denise recognized their faces on the news, but unfortunately, there was no way to confirm her account as they left no paper trail, and the gas station had already taped over its surveillance footage. On February 5, 2012, Charlie and Braden Powell were supposed to visit their dad, Josh. When their caseworker, Elizabeth Griffin Hall, arrived at Josh's house, the boys got out of the car excitedly. They seemed happy to see their dad, according to Griffin Hall. As they approached the house, Josh abruptly shut the door before Griffin Hall could enter. She found his behavior strange, especially given his status as a suspect in Susan's disappearance. Griffin Hall tried to get Josh to open the door, but he ignored her. From outside, she heard him saying something about a surprise for Charlie, followed by Braden crying. This worried Griffin Hall because, although Josh often surprised his sons, something felt off this time.
Did the door open? Did you see Josh?
I saw Josh. I saw Josh for just 1 second. His eyes caught mine, and he had a look in his eyes. It was just kind of sheepish. And then he slammed the door. As soon as the door closed, I heard him say, "Charlie, I've got a big surprise for you." And then I heard Braden cry out. And so I knocked and I knocked and I rang the doorbell and I started yelling at it, "Josh, let me in."
As she stood there, Griffin Hall noticed the smell of gasoline coming from the house. Panicked, she ran to her car to call 911. The dispatcher, Dave Lavrek, didn't fully grasp the urgency of the situation, despite Griffin Hall's pleas. He asked for trivial details and didn't realize the seriousness until later.
Okay, how long will it be? I don't know, ma'am. They have to respond to emergency, life-threatening situations first. The first available deputy. Well, this could be life-threatening.
So you're telling the 911 dispatcher this is an emergency. This is a big deal. There are kids, and what are you getting from the other side?
I'm getting, how can you be, who's your supervisor?
I've got the kids in the house and he won't let me in. Whose house is it? Josh Powell. And who's supervising? And he's the husband that I supervise. So you supervise and you're doing the visit? Yeah, I supervise yourself?
I'm not getting an emergency response. They're not responding to me at the level that I'm telling them that I could smell the gas. I can smell the gas, I told.
By the time Griffin Hall's call was taken seriously, it was too late. An explosion engulfed the house, killing Josh, Charlie, and Braden. It took around 22 minutes for help to arrive, but by then, the tragedy had already occurred. Josh's decision to end his own life and the lives of his children wasn't a sudden impulse. It had been brewing for weeks, maybe even months. Before Charlie and Braden arrived on February 5th, Josh gave away their toys and books. He also collected gallons of gasoline, preparing for what he had planned. Moments before his sons arrived, Josh sat at his computer and wrote farewell messages to loved ones, explaining his decision. He expressed his inability to live without his boys and apologized for any hurt he had caused. But there was a dark side to Josh's actions. His plan to kill Charlie and Braden showed anger and bitterness. He didn't even make sure their suffering was minimized before setting the house on fire. Autopsies revealed that the boys died from carbon monoxide poisoning, with chopping injuries as a secondary cause. Josh had attacked them with a hatchet and caused serious wounds before igniting the fire. The boys suffered unimaginable pain and fear in their last moments, betrayed by the one person they trusted the most. Initially, when Josh was told to take a polygraph test and a psychosexual evaluation, the reasons behind it weren't disclosed. However, after the tragic fire, it came to light that investigators had discovered disturbing images on his computer's hard drive, including incestuous drawings. Shockingly, these images weren't shared with all parties involved, including the Cox family's lawyer. If they had been aware, the Coxes could have taken steps to prevent Josh from seeing Charlie and Braden. Even more distressing was the revelation that Josh had sexually abused his own sons before their deaths. Authors Greg Olson and Rebecca Morris uncovered evidence of this abuse based on interviews with family and friends. According to their findings, during their time with Susan's parents, Charlie and Braden refused to wear pajamas, claiming, "Daddy said it was okay to sleep naked." Charlie even confided to Chuck that he and his brother slept in bed with Josh. Later, one of the brothers drew a troubling picture with the words, "Don't play with me," next to an adult and a child. Additionally, when removed from Josh's custody, Braden was diagnosed with a fungal skin infection, which can often result from sexual contact. Friends of Susan Powell suspected Josh of poisoning her in October 2009, just 2 months before her disappearance. Susan had been feeling nauseous and suspected she might be pregnant, which was later confirmed, but unfortunately she miscarried. According to her friend Amber Hardman, Josh prepared various organic concoctions for Susan to drink, including thick yogurt and fermented kefir drinks. While Susan hoped to have another child, Josh didn't share her enthusiasm. Steve Powell, in an interview with the police, mentioned that Susan wanted another baby, but Josh was practicing safe sex. Although there's no concrete evidence, Dave Cawley, the host of the Cold podcast focusing on the Powell family, speculates that Josh may have poisoned Susan the day before she disappeared. Josh rarely cooked, and Susan felt unwell and needed to rest after eating, as recalled by Giovanna Owings. Cawley's theory suggests that Josh might have crushed pills into the pancake batter and then used a tool to harm Susan before hiding her body and putting it in the minivan's trunk. But this theory contradicts Charlie's statements about Susan being with them on the camping trip, as well as the account from the Flying J employee who claimed to have seen the Powell family on the night of the camping trip. Josh Powell's reputation as a self-centered know-it-all who dominated conversations was well known among those who knew him. Former neighbor John Hallowell described the dynamic, saying, "We all love Susan and we tolerate Josh because he comes along. It's part of the package. That's how most people felt. She was always worrying about other people, where Josh was always the opposite. He was only ever concerned about himself, which made things sometimes a little difficult." As more details emerged about Josh's behavior, friends, family, and neighbors shared their experiences with the man believed to be responsible for his wife's disappearance and the tragic deaths of his sons. During Susan's labor with their first son, Charlie, Josh prioritized backing up his computer over taking her to the hospital, making Susan's parents drive her instead. Even when he finally arrived at the hospital, he sat working on his laptop until he was told to be with his wife. Josh exerted tight control over the household to the point where Susan had to ask for permission to drive, and he would monitor their finances. He even went as far as forcing Susan to knit socks instead of buying new ones, and limited how much their children could eat. According to Susan's friend Rachel Marini, Josh once callously remarked about Charlie's meals, saying, "He gets 1 meal a day at daycare. That's all he needs. You're not wasting my food on him because he's just going to poop it out." This attitude led to Charlie being diagnosed with malnutrition at just a year old. Josh's control extended to Susan's mobility, as he banned her from having a cell phone and forced her to ride a bicycle to work. He even restricted her showers to save money, despite indulging in gambling at a local casino himself. What happened to the Powell family seemed to compound with the death of Josh's brother, Michael Powell, who jumped to his death from a building in downtown Minneapolis in February 2013. Michael, who was considered the more stable member of the Powell family, had a promising future. He was pursuing a doctoral degree in cognitive science at the University of Minnesota and had served in the U.S. Army before that. Despite his promising career and academic pursuits, Michael fiercely defended Josh and their father, even against serious accusations. He firmly denied law enforcement's charges against his father and dismissed them as lies made up to damage the Powell family's reputation. Michael was also entangled in a legal battle with Chuck and Judy Cox over insurance policies worth $1.5 million, which Josh had changed to list Michael as the primary beneficiary just months before the murder-suicide. But Michael's loyalty to Josh was filled with deceit and questionable actions. He repeatedly lied under oath about his involvement in Susan's disappearance, including hiding a Facebook account used to spy on search efforts for her body. Suspicion grew when it was discovered that Michael had his broken-down car towed to a salvage yard shortly after Susan went missing. Although forensic testing showed inconclusive results, the presence of human decomposition indicated by a sniffer dog raised eyebrows. Utah police suspected that Michael may have helped Josh in disposing of Susan's body, but didn't have enough evidence to press charges. Michael's death only added to the sorrow and mystery surrounding the Powell family, leaving behind unresolved questions and pain. The deaths of Charlie and Braden Powell, at the hands of their own father, Josh Powell, led to questions about the role of Washington's Department of Social and Health Services in allowing them access to their father. The Cox family, Susan Powell's parents, filed a lawsuit against the DSHS, alleging negligence and seeking damages for the suffering endured by the boys. Initially dismissed in 2015, the lawsuit was revived by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in 2019, allowing it to proceed to trial. The trial, which began in February 2020, had disturbing details, including evidence of Susan's blood near a recently cleaned sofa and Josh's quick actions to withdraw her retirement account funds after her disappearance. The DSHS argued that prior to the murders, there wasn't enough evidence to keep Josh away from his children completely and cited strict guidelines and limitations on their authority. But the Coxes believed that the agency should have recognized the danger Josh posed to his children, especially given his status as the primary person of interest in Susan's disappearance. The decision to proceed to trial was based on concerns that DSHS allowed Josh too much control over the children's visitation and failed to heed warnings from police detectives, family members, and the boys' counselor about the potential danger they faced. To this day, Susan Powell's case remains unsolved. Stephen Powell was considered a person of interest, but was never charged in connection with her disappearance. He died in 2018 while he was serving time for child pornography and voyeurism. In 2020, Washington State awarded Susan's parents $98 million for negligence related to the deaths of their grandchildren.
Court is reconvened.
Has the jury reached a verdict, ma'am?
If it pleases the court, we have.
Was the state of Washington negligent? Answer, yes. What do you find Plaintiff Charles Powell's total amount of damages? $57,500,000. Braden Powell's total amount of damages? $57,500,000.
We've come to the end of today's video. What do you think about this case? Do you think Josh Powell killed his wife? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want more videos like this, please be sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on more true crime videos. Until next time, bye for now.